Hello and thanks for joining us. This is Robert Kalua bringing you This Week in the News. Here are some of the week's main stories. Have authorized the Southern Region Water Board to borrow 25.5 million euros, which is equivalent to over 24.5 billion kwacha, for the provision of piped water for residents in Luwonde, Balaka, and Mangochi. Finance Minister Felix Mulusu says residents in these areas require about 18 million litres of water per day, but only 2.3 million litres are made available, a situation which leaves the said areas dry often. The project, which will be implemented in the 5 phases, is expected to commence this April. This is what Mulusu told us.
Parliament has approved the Southern Region Water Board loan authorization. This is a bill authorizing us to borrow 26.5 million euros from the European Investment Bank. And this is to bring water to the towns of Luwonde and Balaka, but also to support the water project in Mangochi. And also, in addition to that, it is also to enable us to set up a power generation plant in Zomba, which will be generating about 3/4 of a megawatt to support Southern Region Water Board in terms of the energy which they require to pump water for their operations. So this bill, as I say, is authorizing us that we should borrow that money for us to do the work that is required to bring the water to these 2 towns, and indeed extending to Mangochi.
Meanwhile, as the House adjourned, Leader of Opposition Kondwa Nkrumah called on government to find means of taming an appetite for borrowing in a quest to lessen economic burden for the country. Nkrumah said this in his winding speech for the mid-year budget review meeting, saying currently the debt stands at 4.8 trillion kwacha. Andrew Viano filed this report.
Finance Minister Felix Mulusu Friday presented the mid-year budget review for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, which has now been pegged at 2.3 trillion kwacha, up from 2.1 trillion kwacha. The budget has seen wages and salaries getting the lion's share of the financial appropriation plan, now at 525 billion kwacha, from 523 billion kwacha that was allocated last year. Overall, the financial plan has seen expenditures up by about 140 billion kwacha to cover the emergency costs that have recently arisen. But reacting to the mid-year financial plan by Ton's Alliance government, Polytechnic-based economic expert Dr. Bechan Cheleni has faulted the financial plan for failing to inspire the private sector.
We were expecting that maybe we would see some incentives to be undertaken, incentives that would push companies to produce more from within the country, because it is when they are producing more that we get more tax revenue. Otherwise, government business does not have to be crippled because we don't have resources. That cannot be all right.
Economics Association of Malawi President Lauren Nyasulu is worried that trade deficit continues to widen.
Our companies have been struggling because here it means that we're not exporting as much as we should as a country, but also it means that even the countries that are in these businesses have not been doing that well. So the trade balance continues to widen, and this is something that I think moving forward, even maybe in the next budget, government should come up clear on what measures can be put in place to incentivize the private sector, but also to start addressing the structural constraints that are there in our economy for us to be able to start reducing the trade balance that is currently existing.
On failure by Malawi Revenue Authority (MRA) to collect the projected revenues locally, business and tax expert Kevin Mpande suggests it's high time the tax collecting body change the approach in tax collection.
The economy is very bad. If the economy is very bad, it affects the businesses. When the business is affected, it shall mean that they will not make more money, which will lead to paying more taxes. So at the end of the day, MRA will end up collecting less. There is also what we call when corruption corruption, it can be also one of the factors. People, instead of going to pay tax, they are doing corrupt practices with the officers, maybe ending up reducing the taxes. The tax rates also, which if we can expand it, you find that it's part of the corruption also. It's related. You find that the tax rates in Malawi, they're too high.
Members of Parliament are expected to start scrutinizing the allocations from next week before approving them.
Earlier this week, High Court Judge Dorothy De Gabriel convicted 2 men in Nkatabe for the 2018 murder of a man with albinism. The case attracted a lot of public interest. Yasin Kwenda Puri, 57, was murdered as his child washed in his house located at Kande Trade Center in Nkatabe. Judge De Gabriel is yet to set a date for sentencing. And the High Court Judge Kenyatta Nyirenda threw out an application by former President Peter Mutharika and former Chief Secretary Roy Dumhara in which the two wanted to hold the claim made for them to pay 170 million for forcing into leave Chief Justice Andrew Nyirenda and another judge way back in 2020. The two had applied to have the claim aborted on basis that it was too high. Andrew Viano filed this report.
In a written judgment made on March 22, in the chambers that Zodiak has seen, High Court Judge Kenyatta Nyirenda has dismissed the application by lawyers for former President Peter Mutharika and former Chief Secretary to the government Lloyd Muhara, who applied for a stay on an order to have the two pay 170 million kwacha. This was a claim by the lawyers of Malawi Law Society, Human Rights Defenders Coalition and Association of Magistrates before assessment was made by Registrar of the Courts. In their argument, lawyers for Mutharika and Muhara, Charles Muhango and Mwaibanda, argued that the costs were too high to be covered by their clients. But in response, one of the lawyers for the applicants, Kumbo Soko, argued the costs put forth were before an assessment by Registrar of the High Court. And in his judgment, Justice Kenyatta Nyirenda wondered why it took so long for the two to make an application for the stay of the claim. He has since dismissed it in totality, with cost adding it was devoid of merit. Mutharika and Muhara already face a 68 million kwacha bill for their role in the alleged plot to remove Chief Justice Andrew Nyirenda and Justice Twea following a ruling made on March 12. On June 12, 2020, Muhara issued a public notice that the Chief Justice Andrew Nyirenda and Twea should proceed on leave to clear their days pending retirement, a development that angered HRDC, Association of Magistrates in Malawi, and lawyers who later held demonstrations protesting the decisions as infringement of the doctrine of separation of powers.
Heads of state of more than 10 countries, including President Lazarus Chakwera, earlier this week paid their last respect to former Tanzanian President, the late John Pombe Magufuli. Magufuli died last week after succumbing to heart complications. Mourning women and men carrying branches of trees ran with the fleet of vehicles carrying the remains of the departed leader on the way to the stadium where the funeral ceremony was held. And well, on arrival in Dodoma, President Chakwera inspected a guard of honor in which he was the only one wearing the face mask. The last time he was there, he did not. Daniel Mawawa had actually analyzed the change of heart by President Chakwera, which is against the narrative in Tanzania.
This is October 7, 2020. President Lazarus Chakwera on his official state visit to Tanzania. Now, clearly, if you see on the pictures, no one is wearing a mask. When I say no one, it includes the two heads of state and their respective delegations. We were told at the time that the Malawi delegation, led by President Chakwera, was asked by Tanzania not to use or wear face masks. Actually, when he welcomed President Chakwera at the airport, President John Pombe Magufuli extended this handshake to President Chakwera. Now, by the way, this was October, when the pandemic COVID-19 was still raging. President John Pombe Magufuli was a COVID-19 skeptic. Actually, to date, Tanzania doesn't accept there is COVID-19, and to them, it's business as usual. That is why, if you clearly see on the screen, during the live funeral ceremony for President John Pombe Magufuli, there are very few people wearing masks. Most Tanzania, the officials from the defense force are not wearing masks. But now, take a look at this. This is President Chakwera's second visit to Tanzania, this time round to attend President Magufuli's funeral ceremony. Interestingly, he's wearing a mask this time round. And that clearly sending a picture he is cautious because times have changed. He's wearing a mask. If you see in this picture, he's wearing a mask, but the Tanzanian official who welcomed him is not. Actually, he is the only one wearing a mask. Clearly, Tanzania sending out or towing that same narrative about COVID-19, but Chakwera not taking chances this time round. Any diplomatic implications to that? That may be a game of wait and see. For now, it's rest in power, John Pombe Magufuli.
You're watching This Week in the News here on Zodiac. We'll be back with more after this.
If there's one thing that all soaps do, it's wash. From buckets to basins, bathrooms to streams, and everything in between.
All soaps wash.
Yes, but Protex is different. Its reinvented formula with flaxseed oil boosts your skin's natural anti-germ defenses by 10 times more, protecting you against 99.9% of germs. So what keeps us healthy?
Protex.
Good health starts here.
To achieve great things in life, you must do little things every day, like the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate. 1, wake up, wake up. 2, brush up, brush up. 3, smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea. Smile through your day with a fresh breath and strong tea. Do the 1, 2, 3 with Colgate and give yourself a future to smile about.
Maule mwaperekedwa kale. Ife timafuna tidandauleko kwa mfumu ndale ndo athu mwachokera ku district. Kodi ndi mmene kwagwera mliri wa COVID-19 uwu. Tikumva mauthenga kuperekedwa okhudza ndi mmene tingapewere matenda awa. Ndipo kwakukulu nkhani yake ndiyokhudza madzi komanso ukhondo. Koma kudera kwathu kuno tili ndi vuto la madzi lalikulu. Mijigo ndiyoperewera. Tili ndi umodzi umene ulolimbira nanso kutengera kuchuluka kwa madera amene amathandizika ndi mjigowu. Mzipatala, mmisika ndi m'madepoti mulibenso madzi odalirika kuti munthu angasambe m'manja. Mulibenso zimbudzi zokwanira. Ndiye tidziteteza bwanji ngati tilibe madzi aukhondo? Ife lero tikufuna mutionjezere mijigo ndi mipopi madzi mzipatala, mmisika ndi m'madepoti kuti ife tipititse patsogolo ukhondo. Ana athu ndale ndonse tikhale ndi moyo. Tipewe kutenga matenda a COVID-19.
Atsogoleri a mizinda tetezana anthu anu powapatsa zoyenera monga madzi ndi zimbudzi zokwanira mzipatala, m'masukulu ndi m'madera kuti apewe kutenga matenda a COVID-19 kuti akhale ndi moyo. Matenda a COVID-19 ndi opeweka.
Do you know, here at Lilongwe Water Board, we have in place a 24-hour call center just for you, our customers. Anytime you experience a water problem, don't hesitate to call us on 253 and it's free. Low water pressure, no water situation, billing queries, bill payment, pipe burst, pipe leaks, faults, tips, and illegal connections. Just dial 253 and we will assist you.
Welcome back. You're with me, Robert Karua. Before we continue with the news, let's take another. Moving on, Teachers Union of Malawi TUM has given the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Education and Social Welfare a deadline of this Tuesday to provide a response from the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 on the future of the earlier agreement over their demands for COVID-19 risk allowance. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has submitted its resolution to the committee for once-off COVID-19 payment of teachers, an agreement which was made after mediation talks between TUM and Education Ministry. Chimwemwe Padata has filed this report.
It appears the tussle between public teachers and government on the issue of COVID-19 risk allowance for the former might not come to an end anytime soon. This is because the decision to provide a once-off payment to the teachers was left in the hands of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 after the Parliamentary Committee on Education made the recommendation in a deal that ended a 2-week teacher sit-in. The task force is said to have responded to this recommendation, but the Parliamentary Committee has not made public contents of the response. Now, TUM President William Malimba says the committee has until Tuesday, 23rd March, to make the response available to the teachers or face consequences.
We don't have any information from the government. Up to now, there is nothing which is coming out.
The Parliamentary Committee on Education Chairperson Brian Kaisi could not be drawn for comment, but education activists fear the statement from Malimba could trigger another disruption to public schools. Here is one of the activists, Benedicto Kondoe.
Is really very frustrating because this could trigger another disruption. And as a country, we have lost enormously through these unprecedented closures. We cannot afford.
The teachers accepted a once-off payment to cover a period of 3 months, but they were initially asking government to provide a risk allowance in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is Chimwemwe Padata for Zodiak.
On Monday, the world commemorated World Water Day under the theme Valuing Water. The day comes at least 7 million Malawians have no access to safe and potable water. This is 33% of the national population. A Development Minister of Natural Resources, Nancy Tembo, concedes is worrisome and requiring urgent national attention. Andrew Viano found this report.
Every year, Malawi joins the rest of the world in commemorating World Water Day, which falls on 22nd March. But our visit to a number of sites in Lilongwe found that access to potable and safe water is still a far-fetched dream. Our visit to areas like in Siriza and in Tandile found that people resort to accessing water in unsafe streams and sources because, according to them, water is so exorbitant and they cannot even afford. For example, our findings found that in Tandile and Siriza, there is a population of close to 40,000 people, but the water kiosks that were planted by water providers in the city are not beyond 100, meaning that over 40,000 people have to tussle for these water kiosks that are not beyond 100.
And in the week ending, the CCAP Blantyre Synod asked religious and traditional leaders to demonstrate leadership in mobilizing their subjects to go for COVID-19 vaccination. The Synod General Secretary Reverend Biri Gama told journalists after the Synod COVID-19 launch on Tuesday that community leaders have to rise up and encourage people to receive the vaccine with faith in order to contain the pandemic. Christopher Sunday was there in our reports.
Officials from Blantyre Synod of the CCAP have told journalists on Tuesday that the country has been administering various vaccines in the past and that people should not be disturbed by false rumors to shy away from the COVID-19 vaccine. Both the Synod's General Secretary, Reverend Bire Gama, and the Synod's moderator, Reverend Masau Kombolembole, emphasized on the need for the people to take the vaccine with faith that it will protect them from the pandemic. Gama then called on religious and traditional leaders to demonstrate leadership in mobilizing their subjects to have the AstraZeneca jab.
Therefore, today we thought it was very imperative and very important that we must do the launching so that the entire world and the entire nation of Malawi should understand that as CCAP Blantyre Synod, we have accepted the vaccine.
Meanwhile, Director of Health and Social Services for Blantyre, Gift Kawalazira, says out of 7,000 people who have received the vaccine, no one has been found with adverse effects.
But since we have actually expanded the bracket from yesterday, we are also vaccinating people that are 60 years of age and above, people with chronic conditions like HIV and AIDS, diabetes, hypertension, TB, and other chronic conditions.
Officials have also commended the media for giving out proper information about the vaccine. Reporting for Zodiac from Blantyre, this is Christopher Sande.
On Tuesday, a local policy think tank, Mwapata Institute, urged members of parliament to enact laws coming from comprehensive policy research, saying it's key to transforming the agriculture sector. The Institute's acting executive director, William Chadza, made the remarks Tuesday night in Lilongwe, when his organization engaged members of parliament through 3 parliamentary committees of agriculture, trade and natural resources. Madali Sopiri was there and now reports.
Speaking during the interface with the parliamentarians, Acting Executive Director for Mwapata Institute, William Chadza, said his organization conducts research which comes up with evidence on how the agricultural sector can develop. He says, therefore, the partnership with legislators is very key.
We believe that this partnership is going to help the agricultural sector specifically and the economy more broadly. Because it means that the committee members are going to have adequate information for them to effectively contribute in debates, but at the same time they also have adequate information for them to scrutinize various reports, which is going to have an overall broader impact.
And Deputy Chairperson of the Agriculture Committee of Parliament, Tulem Chilapondwa, said they were impressed with the presentations on what Mwapata is doing.
What actually caught our hearts most was the research that they've been doing on different areas in the agriculture sector, and of course the proposal to come up with policies that will help improve the agriculture sector. One policy is that of actually adding value to what we grow in Malawi. This is one area that as a country, as a Committee on Agriculture, we have to help the Ministry of Agriculture push for policies that will actually make us be in the addition of value seriously.
And Chairperson of the Trade Parliamentary Committee, Simplex Chichola Banda, said his committee was ready to work with organizations for the betterment of the country.
They are highlighting some of the challenges in the agricultural sector, in the trade sector. For example, that we import more than what we produce. This is evident if you go around shops in Lilongwe. Go to Gateway Mall tomorrow. You see that most of the vegetables and fruits are actually imported from outside. That has a very bad bearing on the local production, which is done by our farmers. So for us, I think it's a timely intervention because it is opening up our eyes to see on the areas that require our urgent attention.
This was the first time for Mwapata Institute to engage the members of parliament. For Zodiak, this is Madali Tsopiri reporting.
Let's now have a look at sports. The country's national football team boosted its chances of qualifying for the next year's AFCON finals in Cameroon following a 1-0 victory over South Sudan on Wednesday. However, the Flames' ticket to Cameroon will be confirmed if they beat Uganda, whom they face in their final Group B qualifier at Kamuzu Stadium in Blantyre on Monday. Sam Banda found this report.
A combination of self-belief, unity and determination have helped the Flames revitalize their chances of securing a place at next year's Africa Cup of Nations in Cameroon after they chalked a much-needed victory over South Sudan in the Sudanese capital Khartoum on Wednesday. The 3 points garnered have taken the Flames' tally in Group B to 7 points from 5 round-robin games ahead of their final match at home to Ugandan Cranes at Kamuzu Stadium in Blantyre this Monday. Burkina Faso, who lead the group with 9 points, have also done the Flames a huge favor by holding Uganda to a goalless draw in Kampala, leaving Malawi with an outright win over the East African champions, their only option to turn their dream into a reality. Soccer analysts George Kiusiwa and Higam Kandawire have hailed the Flames for the vital victory, saying it will motivate them to pull another surprise when they face Uganda on Monday.
This is a strong drive as we go into the last round of the qualifiers. The Flames have given themselves a huge boost because they are facing Uganda at home and everything is in their hands If they miss it, then they miss it for good. But surely, Malawi is poised to make it to Cameroon.
Malawi have got advantage that they are going to play at home. They've got no pressure at all. And they've got all chances whereby Malawi can qualify because it's a must win. So still, we have got a hill to climb. We have got a mountain to climb so that Malawi should not relax.
The Flames last played at the finals of the Africa Cup of Nations in Angola 11 years ago.
Well, that's all we had time for in this edition of This Week in the News. Let's take another look at the headlines before we leave. If you are in the target groups for the first phase of the COVID-19 vaccine, please go for the jab without fail. You could save your life and that of others. My name is Robert Kalua. Thanks for watching.
Let's take a moment to talk about money. Life can get a little pricey out there. The passing pleasure of a restaurant meal, a fleeting fast food feast, or those sports magazines you never really finish. But what if you got to watch the big game rather than read about it? And what if that lasted a lot longer? Well, with